I'm Jason, 31, and the black sheep of the family. Or at least that's the role they've cast me in since I was old enough to have an opinion they didn't like. I'm not reckless or dramatic. I don't cause scenes or throw tantrums. I just don't play by the script they all agreed on behind closed doors. The one where my older brother Tyler is the golden child. My mom is the long-suffering matriarch. And I'm the disappointment who's too sensitive or doesn't understand how families work. I don't show up much anymore. After years of biting my tongue through backhanded compliments and whispered gossip, I started pulling away. At first, they acted offended. Then, they stopped pretending. Family events came and went without a single invitation. Birthdays, holidays, even my own father's retirement party. I found out about all of them after the fact, through blurry photos on Facebook or group chats I was never part of. I didn't complain. I learned to live around the silence. I made my own life outside of them. I built a small business from the ground up, one no one in my family has ever asked about. I dated quietly, kept my wins private, and swallowed the bitterness that tried to rise every time I saw my last name in a caption that didn't include me. So, when I got a text from Tyler saying, "Engagement dinner this Friday. You can come if you want," I stared at my phone for a good 10 minutes. Not, "We'd love to see you," or even a proper invitation. Just that, a throwaway line like he was doing me a favor. I almost deleted it, but something in me, call it curiosity, maybe even masochism, wanted to see how deep the rod had spread. I RSVP'd with a thumbs up. The dinner was at some overpriced steakhouse downtown, the kind with dark wood walls and wine menus thicker than their actual menus. I showed up right on time, dressed decently in a navy blazer and slacks. Nothing flashy. I even brought a small gift. Nothing extravagant, just a nice bottle of champagne and a card. Thought it might break the ice, or at least smooth over the awkwardness I knew was waiting for me inside. The hostess led me to a private room near the back. I could hear the laughter before I saw them. My mother's sharp, performative laugh, my uncle's hoarse cackle, the polite chuckle of strangers trying to fit in. When I walked in, the noise died just slightly, just enough for me to feel it. Tyler stood at the center, one hand on the small of his fiancée's back. Her name is Brooke. She's tall, blonde, the kind of woman who looks like she rehearses her Instagram poses in front of the mirror every morning. She looked me up and down like I was an unpaid intern who just wandered into the boardroom by accident. "Jason," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Wow, you made it." Tyler clapped me on the back like I was a distant cousin who just flew in from abroad. "Didn't think you'd show, man." "Yeah," I said, setting the champagne on the table beside a stack of expensive-looking party favors. "Wouldn't miss it." Brooke leaned closer to him, loud enough for the table to hear. "We're keeping the guest list small for the actual wedding. No plus once, especially for people like, you know." Her eyes flicked to me, then away like I wasn't worth finishing the sentence for. My stomach tightened, but I just smiled. I didn't flinch. I'd learned long ago that any reaction, even hurt, was just fuel for them. My mother raised her glass. "Let's just be grateful he even invited you at all. It's so nice to see you around again, sweetie. We were starting to forget what you looked like." The table laughed. A few of the strangers shifted uncomfortably, but no one said anything. My Uncle Ray chimed in, already on his third scotch. "Hey, maybe you can park cars at the wedding. That way, you'll be useful and still technically there." More laughter. Brooke giggled like he'd just performed a tight five at a comedy club. I sat down slowly, setting my folder on the empty seat beside me. "Nice to see you too, Uncle Ray." I didn't say much through the appetizers. I let them talk over me, around me. I nodded politely at their fake smiles and exaggerated stories. I watched my mom gush over Brooke like she'd found the daughter she always wanted. Watched my brother beam like this was the culmination of every expectation they'd ever pinned on him. I let them have their fantasy for a little longer. I needed to make sure I hadn't overestimated just how entitled they'd become. About halfway through dinner, Brooke started explaining their wedding plans to the table. It's going to be at the Palisade Estate in May. Very intimate. Only 50 people. We're keeping it elegant, exclusive, just close friends and family. Very expensive, my mom added, sipping her wine like it was holy water. But it's worth it for Tyler. He deserves the best. Ray grunted. Bet that venue costs more than my house. Brooke laughed. Oh, it's completely covered. Tyler's sponsor has it all taken care of. One of his clients. Super generous. I raised an eyebrow. A sponsor? Tyler shot me a warning look like I was treading on sacred ground. Yeah, a friend who believes in our future. Huh? I said, and tapped my folder lightly. Brooke glanced at it, then back at me. What's that? Nothing important, I said. Just some boring paperwork, sponsor stuff. There was a slight flicker of confusion in her eyes, but she waved it off. By dessert, the jokes were turning meaner. Someone joked about my old car. Someone else brought up the time I dropped out of grad school after Dad refused to co-sign the loan. Brooke laughed a little too hard when someone asked if I was still working at that little company. Tyler didn't defend me once. My mom acted like she couldn't hear anything mean being said, even when it was her saying it. I waited until the laughter reached its loudest point, until their comfort was so thick you could taste it. Then I opened the folder. Cool, I said, not raising my voice, just loud enough to cut through the noise. Then I'll let the venue know you don't need my sponsorship anymore. The laughter died instantly. I flipped the folder open and laid it on the table. Inside was a signed letter of agreement, a receipt of a $12,500 down payment made in my name, and a scheduled payment plan for the remaining balance of the Palisade estate. My company logo was on the top of the page. I'm sure they'll understand, I added casually. The cancellation fees only. What, 40% shouldn't be a problem for you guys. I mean, you've got it all covered, right? My brother stared at the papers like they were in a different language. Brooke's face had gone pale. My mother's jaw clenched, the way it always did when controls slipped through her fingers. What is this? Brooke asked, her voice tight. That friend who sponsored the venue, I said, leaning back. That was me. I just didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I thought it'd be nice to support family. No one spoke. I figured since I wasn't bringing a +1, I added with a smile, I could at least bring something else to the table. Tyler finally found his voice. You said you didn't want to be involved. I said I wasn't sure I'd be invited, but you were so generous to let me come tonight. I paused, and now that I've seen how welcome I really am, I'm thinking maybe it's best if I step away from the whole thing. And then I stood up slowly, deliberately, as the tension in the room rose like a tide about to crash. That's when Brooke grabbed the papers. That's when my mother stood up too, eyes flashing. And that's when Tyler said something that changed everything. Tyler slammed his hand on the table hard enough that the wine glasses clinked, and a few people jumped. Jason, don't be dramatic, he snapped. You're really going to pull this over a joke? I looked at him, genuinely curious. A joke? You think that's what tonight was? Brooke tossed the folder back onto the table like it was dirty. You're seriously going to sabotage our wedding just because you're bitter. You're not part of the inner circle. I tilted my head slightly. You mean the circle that laughs at me, insults me, and treats me like a stray dog? Someone felt bad for that circle. My mother finally spoke, her voice low and sharp. "This is exactly why we don't invite you to things, Jason. You always make everything about yourself." That one hit me, not because it was true, but because it was so incredibly predictable. The same playbook every time. I wasn't supposed to react. I was supposed to take the hit, smile, and come back for more. When I didn't, I was the villain. I kept my voice calm. "You invited me here to be your punching bag. You just didn't think I'd swing back." My uncle let out a dry laugh. "He thinks he's a big shot now just 'cause he put down a deposit." Brooke leaned forward, her tone icy. "You want a thank you card, Jason? Is that it? Because if you're doing all this for attention, I'm not," I cut in. "Trust me, Brooke, I don't need your attention or your approval." I turned to Tyler. "But you're my brother. You didn't even tell me you were getting married until after everyone else knew. And then you invite me last minute, like I'm an afterthought." Tyler's expression softened for half a second, then hardened again. "I didn't think you'd care." That hurt more than I expected. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's the problem, isn't it?" There was a heavy silence. One of the waiters peeked into the room, sensed the tension, and quickly backed out. A few of the other guests, people I didn't even know, looked like they wanted to melt into their seats. They had been enjoying the show up until now. Now it was getting real. Brooke glanced at my mother, who gave her a slight nod, some kind of unspoken signal that told me they'd been on the same wavelength for months, maybe longer. Brooke folded her arms. "Fine. You want us to beg? Not happening. You made your point. You're not part of this family. You never have been. And Tyler doesn't need your money to get married." "Good," I said, standing tall. "Because he's not getting it," my mom scoffed. "You really think we can't find another venue? That will cancel the whole wedding over this." "I don't think you'll cancel it," I said. "But you won't find a place like the Palisade with less than 4 months to go. Not during wedding season. And even if you do, you'll be starting from scratch. New vendors, new permits, new deposits. You'll spend triple what I put down just trying to match it." My uncle opened his mouth to argue, then slowly closed it. Tyler looked like he wanted to fight me. His fists were clenched at his sides, jaw tight. But he knew I was right. "I didn't do this to ruin your wedding," I said. "I did it because for once I thought I could be part of something. Because I wanted to believe that maybe things had changed." No one said a word, not even Brooke, whose perfect posture was starting to crack under the pressure. I nodded once slowly, then gathered the folder from the table and tucked it back into my bag. "I'll send the venue a cancellation notice tomorrow," I said, as I turned to leave. "Good luck finding a replacement. Oh, and you might want to warn your vendors. A lot of them were booked through my connections." That was the last thing I said before I walked out. I didn't look back. Not when I heard my uncle mutter, "What just happened?" Not when Brooke hissed something under her breath. Not even when I caught the faint sound of my mother calling my name. Sharp and furious, like I'd stolen something that was rightfully hers. Outside, the night air was cool, a sharp contrast to the stuffy tension I'd just escaped. I stood under the awning for a minute, breathing it in. My hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from the weight of years finally settling into place. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt free and a little hollow, like the part of me that had always hoped they'd change had finally given up. I turned my phone off as I walked to my car. I already knew there would be texts, maybe even voicemails, apologies, insults, bargaining attempts, maybe all three in the same message. But I wasn't ready to hear any of them. Not yet. Because what they didn't know was this wasn't the only leverage I had. They thought I'd just cancel the venue and disappear again. But I'd seen enough tonight to know that it was time for more than just walking away. It was time to make sure they remembered exactly who they had underestimated. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I parked in a quiet lot by the waterfront and sat with the engine off, windows down, just listening to the water lap against the dock. It was late, almost midnight, but I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, like I had swallowed an electric current. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel while my mind raced through every moment of that dinner. Every smug comment, every fake smile, every time my mother glanced at me like I was something she had to explain away. I hadn't planned on pulling the plug tonight. That folder in my bag had been a quiet threat, a last resort, just in case things went south. But I should have known. Deep down, I'd expected it. I practically scripted their lines in my head. Still, hearing them say it out loud, Brooke's little jab about people like you, my mom raising her glass like I was some charity case they decided to tolerate for an evening. It was worse than I'd imagined. Not because it was new, but because it wasn't. It was the same script, same roles, same applause, except now I was done playing mine. I unlocked my phone and opened my email. I already had the venue manager's contact pulled up. I'd met her personally when I'd arranged the deposit. Nice woman, extremely competent, and a little too eager to work with someone who had real money. I didn't send the cancellation yet. Not tonight. I wasn't doing this in a haze of emotion. I wanted to think. Instead, I opened a different folder, one I'd labeled Contingencies 6 weeks ago, just after Tyler sent that lukewarm text inviting me to the engagement dinner. I'm not petty by default, but I am prepared. This folder had everything. Vendor contracts, the original design mock-ups for the invitations. Brooke had gushed about them on Instagram, a contact list of her bridesmaids, many of whom had never even met me. And more importantly, a spreadsheet color-coded, meticulously detailed, outlining the entire financial scaffolding of their wedding. Because what none of them knew was that the venue wasn't the only thing I had covered. Brooke had gone shopping with my mother back in January. She had posted about it, proudly showcasing her dream dress on a mannequin at a boutique downtown. That dress had been part of a package I quietly funded under a business associate's name. It was easy enough. I knew someone who owed me a favor, someone who ran a private bridal financing group. Brooke's dress paid for. Her alterations, veil, and accessories also covered, but not in her name. Same with the catering deposit run through a corporate shell account tied to my consulting firm. The string holding their wedding together. That was me, invisible but everywhere, because I knew my family, and I knew they'd smile to my face while sharpening their knives behind my back. I wasn't going to destroy anything out of spite. I wasn't going to ruin their day just to watch them suffer. But I was going to take back control. I leaned back against the seat and stared at the stars over the water. Somewhere in the distance, a horn sounded low and mournful. They thought I was weak because I walked away. They never imagined I'd come back with receipts. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. 32 unread messages by the time I rolled out of bed and made coffee. Tyler, of course, was first, then Mom, then, surprisingly, Brooke. Her message was short and acidic. "You need to call me now." I didn't reply. Instead, I got dressed, put on a crisp white button-up, and drove to the Palisade estate. The manager, Clarissa, greeted me with a warm smile and a hint of concern. "Mr. Ellison, is everything all right?" I nodded. "Just need to update a few things in the contract." She led me to her office where I laid out my plan. Simple, polite, entirely professional. I wasn't canceling the wedding. Not yet. I was altering the contract, removing the current booking under Tyler and Brooke's name, and transferring everything, every responsibility, every vendor under mine. Clarissa blinked. You're taking ownership of the event. Exactly. And the guest list. We'll be updating that as well soon. She didn't ask questions, just typed briskly, clicked a few boxes, and printed the revised agreement. As I signed, she asked, "Should I let the couple know of the changes?" I looked her in the eye and said calmly, "No, I'll handle that myself." I walked out of the estate with the sun shining on my back, the wind crisp and cool. That afternoon, I sat down at my computer and started crafting the invitations, not the ones they had planned. Mine, new location details, slightly altered wording, and a few notable omissions. Several names were absent from the list, names of people who had spent years making me feel small in rooms they thought they owned. Instead, I included a handful of others. Old friends, my father's former colleague who used to treat me like a son, my godmother who hadn't been invited at all, a couple of Tyler's childhood friends who had reached out to me quietly over the years to say they missed me, that the family had gone too far. The new list wasn't vengeful. It was just honest. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just rewriting the script. And they didn't know it yet. But the opening scene of their wedding was going to look very, very different, especially when they found out who'd be walking Brooke down the aisle. I didn't wait long. 2 days after I assumed control of the venue and updated the guest list, I sent a short, carefully worded email to Brooke and Tyler. "Hi, per our previous arrangement. Please note that the venue contract has been updated. Further details will be available at the appropriate time. I've also taken the liberty of revising the guest list to reflect those with a genuine connection to the event. If you'd like to discuss next steps, I'm available Friday morning at the Palisade Estate. Best, Jason." Tyler called within 10 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. He tried again and again. Finally, I picked up on the 4th attempt. "What are you doing, Jason?" he barked the second I answered. "Hi to you too," I said calmly. "I trust you saw the email." "You're not serious. You can't just take over our wedding like this. That's not how this works." "It is," I said, "when your wedding is sitting on contracts I signed, deposits I made, and vendors I vetted. You all made it very clear I wasn't really invited to be a part of your lives. So now I'm simply following your lead. You'll still get married. I'll make sure of it. Just not quite the way you imagined. You're ruining everything." "No, Tyler. I'm correcting everything." Brooke called next. I didn't answer. She left a message, her voice high and shaky, trying to sound composed, but just barely holding it together. "Jason, this isn't funny. This is our wedding. You don't get to control that. You're just doing this to get back at us." "Grow up." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Everything was already in motion. Friday morning, I arrived at the Palisade Estate early. Clarissa had everything ready. Revised contracts, updated vendor lists, and a fresh calendar of deliverables. She had also pulled up the finalized floor plan, which I tweaked slightly, shifting the head table, adjusting the reserved seating, and making sure a few names were removed entirely. Then I waited. Tyler and Brooke walked in 15 minutes late, storming through the front doors with matching scowls and an air of forced confidence. "Jason," Brooke said, crossing her arms. "This stops now?" Tyler looked around. "Where's the manager? We want to speak to her." "She's busy," I said. "With me. Have a seat." They didn't. They stood, looming like they were about to lecture a Weward employee. "All right," I said, opening a folder. "Here's how this is going to work. You're getting married here as scheduled. The date remains. Most of the vendors remain. The ceremony will be beautiful. Intimate, classy, just not performative. Brooke blinked. What does that mean? It means your influencer photographer is out, replaced by a proper wedding photographer who focuses on people, not Instagram trends. It means your eye sculpture idea gone. The custom cocktail menu named after your dog's also gone. This wedding isn't a branding exercise. It's a celebration for family. Real family. Tyler finally snapped. This is insane. You don't get to just, I held up a hand. I do, and I have. But I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to make you an offer. Brooke narrowed her eyes. What kind of offer? I looked at them both, steady and calm. I'll keep the wedding intact. I'll pay every remaining balance. I'll make sure it runs smoothly. You'll have your moment. But there are conditions, Tyler snorted. Of course there are. 1, you acknowledge publicly during the reception the people who made this wedding happen. Not just me, but the others you conveniently left out. Dad's former partner who co-signed your business loan. Aunt Susan, who paid your rent for 6 months. The people you forgot when it was time to give thanks. Brooke opened her mouth. But I continued too. My guest list remains. I've invited people who mattered to our family. People you cut out because they didn't fit your aesthetic. You mean like your weird godmother with the birds? Brooke said. I didn't flinch. Yes. Her and your high school friend Jen, who you ghosted after she got married at a courthouse. They're coming. They belong here more than half the people you had on your original list. Tyler stepped forward. And if we say no, I smiled. Then the wedding's canceled. Every vendor gets notified. Every dollar refunded except for the cancellation fees, which you'll owe. The dress gets repossessed. The catering vanishes. And good luck finding another venue this late in the season. You'll spend double what I spent and still end up with a garden party in someone's backyard. They stared at me for a long time. Then Brooke hissed, This is blackmail. No, I said, this is a choice. Tyler was the first to break. He looked tired. Really tired. Like the weight of everything had finally settled on him. Fine, he muttered. Well, do it. Brooke glared at him. Tyler, he turned to her. We don't have a choice. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she swallowed it. She didn't want to be embarrassed. Not now. Not yet. Good, I said, standing. We'll finalize the program next week. The day of the wedding was perfect. Warm sunlight filtered through the trees, and the Palisade estate looked like something out of a movie. Guests arrived on time. The ceremony ran smoothly. The food was excellent. People smiled, laughed, took pictures under twinkling lights. And the guest list? Oh, it was glorious. My godmother hugged me with tears in her eyes. Jen arrived with her husband, who Tyler awkwardly pretended to remember. A retired teacher from our childhood, who had once helped me through a rough patch, was seated front and center. I watched Brooke try to smile through it all, clearly confused by half the people in the room and too proud to admit it. But the real moment came during the reception speeches. Tyler stood up, champagne in hand, and cleared his throat. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, he began, voice tight. And I'd like to thank my wife, Brooke, for making this day so special. But before we toast, there's someone else I need to acknowledge. He turned to me. I've made mistakes. We both have. And this wedding, this day wouldn't have happened without Jason. Not just because of what he gave us, but because of who he is. Someone who stood by us even when we didn't deserve it. Someone who reminded me what family is supposed to be. He raised his glass to Jason. Everyone clapped. Brooke clapped too. It was stiff, but she did it. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. After the wedding, my mother approached me. She didn't say much, just, You didn't have to do all that. I looked her in the eye. But I did, because I finally realized something, Mom. What's that? I don't need your approval or your invitation. I know who I am now, and I'm done begging to be part of a family that only wants me when I'm useful. She blinked. Are you cutting us off? I shook my head. No, I'm just stepping out of the role you wrote for me. Then I walked away. Weeks passed. Tyler sent me a thank you note. It was short, but handwritten. Brooke posted about the wedding online, filtered and polished, of course, but in the captions, she tagged me. She even followed me. I didn't follow back. And my business? It boomed. Turns out a few of the guests were impressed by how the event turned out. I landed 2 new clients before dessert had even been cleared. But more than that, I finally felt free. Not in the dramatic burn-it-all-down way, but in the quiet, powerful way of knowing I was no longer playing a part in someone else's story. I had written my own chapter, and this time, they had no choice but to read.